I used to think heart attacks only happened to other people. Until that one March morning, when my heart quietly stopped for a few seconds without a single warning. It was a calm morning. The sky was blue. I was out in my backyard trimming the lavender bush, just like I'd done every spring for years. I bent down to pick up a broken stem, and suddenly everything went blank. No chest pain, no shortness of breath, just silence. I woke up lying in the grass. My hands were dirty. My shears were still in one hand. The birds were still singing. But something had changed. The ER doctor said it was a transient ischemic episode, a mini heart attack. He called me lucky. But I didn't feel lucky. I felt scared. You see, I thought I was doing everything right. I didn't smoke. I wasn't overweight. I even ate salads for dinner. I figured as long as I didn't feel sick, I wasn't sick. And that right there was the biggest mistake. Because what I didn't know was that the heart doesn't always scream when it's in trouble. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it gives you tiny warnings in the form of bad habits, ignored signs, and little choices that pile up day after day until they suddenly break you. That morning changed everything for me. It made me realize how many dangerous misunderstandings we seniors carry around. We think slowing down is normal. We think feeling tired is just age. We think sitting all day is resting. But the truth is, most of the things we think are harmless after 60 are quietly damaging the heart we still depend on. That's why I made this video. Not to scare you, but to share the 7 things I wish someone had told me before that morning in my garden. Simple things. No fancy medication. No miracle diets. Just small, real habits that can protect your heart and maybe even add years to your life. If you're over 60 or if you love someone who is, I hope you'll stick around until the end. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a man who got a second chance and wants to make it count. And that brings me to the first habit I thought was harmless, but turned out to be one of the most dangerous things I was doing every single day. Did you ever think that just sitting in a chair for too long could slowly destroy your heart? I didn't. Not until I was forced to look back and connect the dots. After I retired at 68, I told myself I had earned the right to rest. I had worked hard my whole life, taught hundreds of students, stood on my feet in classrooms for over 40 years. So the idea of spending a quiet morning in my recliner, flipping through channels or reading old books, felt like a reward. And for a while it was comforting, safe, familiar. But here's what I didn't realize. My body wasn't built to sit still for hours every single day. The American Heart Association has a term for it. They call it sitting disease. When you sit for long periods, your circulation slows. Blood starts pooling in your legs. Your heart has to work harder to pump it back up. Day by day, this strain thickens your blood, increases your blood pressure, and makes plaque more likely to form inside your arteries. Over time, this quietly sets the stage for a heart attack. I was shocked to learn that being sedentary is now considered just as dangerous as smoking. And here's the twist. After I stopped working, I sat even more than I did when I had a job. I'd start the morning with a cup of coffee on the porch, then move to the sofa for an old movie, then to the dining chair for lunch, and then back to the recliner for the afternoon news. Before I knew it, most of my day had been spent in a chair. I told myself I was relaxing, but in truth, I was slowly wearing down the engine that kept me alive. A lot of us over 60 fall into this trap. We think 3 or 4 hours of TV is harmless, that sitting with a book is peaceful, that being still means we're safe. But rest without movement becomes something else. It becomes a quiet threat. So let me ask you, when you sit all day, are you really resting? Or are you letting your heart weaken one silent hour at a time? I had to learn that answer the hard way. These days, I make one small change that keeps me going. Every 45 minutes, I stand up. I stretch my arms. I take a slow walk around the room. I check on the mail or step outside for fresh air. I let my heart know I still care about it. And just when I thought I had sitting under control, I realized there was something even simpler I had been neglecting. something I used every single day but never really appreciated. You know, water seems so simple, but for the heart it's like oil for an old engine. Without it, things start to grind. I never gave much thought to how much water I drank. I wasn't thirsty most of the time, and I figured that was good enough. I told myself my body would ask for what it needed, but looking back, that was one of my biggest blind spots. The truth is, as we get older, our sense of thirst fades. By the time we feel thirsty, our body is already running low. And when you're not drinking enough, your blood becomes thicker, heavier. It moves slower through your veins. The Mayo Clinic explains that dehydration causes a drop in blood volume, which makes the heart work harder. Thick blood can also form clots more easily, especially in older adults. That extra strain on your heart can raise your blood pressure and increase your risk of heart attack or stroke. And it's not just about the heart. Kidneys suffer, joints ache. Even the brain feels foggy when we don't drink enough. I remember my doctor asking me once how much water I drank. I shrugged and said, "I don't really know, maybe a couple of glasses a day." He looked at me with a gentle frown and said, "Calvin, your heart can't run dry." That stuck with me, because the truth is, I wasn't avoiding water on purpose. I just didn't feel like I needed it. And to be honest, I was afraid of waking up at night to use the bathroom. I'd hold back on fluids in the evening just to sleep better. I thought I was being smart. Turns out, a lot of seniors do the same. We trade a quiet night's sleep for what we think is comfort, but in the process, we make our heart's job harder without even realizing it. So let me ask you, are you living with a heart that's being quietly starved? Or are you willing to start with something as simple as 6 glasses of water a day? These days, I start every morning with a warm glass of water. It wakes me up better than coffee. Then I sip slowly throughout the day. I keep a bottle near my chair. Sometimes I add a slice of lemon or a sprig of mint, just enough to make it refreshing. It's not hard, it's just a habit. But it's a habit that changed the way my body feels. My energy, my clarity, even my blood pressure has improved. And just when I thought hydration was enough, I stumbled across something else, something invisible, but just as dangerous for the heart. Stress is not just a feeling. It is a biological poison that slowly wears down the heart. I didn't always understand that. For a long time, I thought stress was just something people talked about when they had jobs or kids to worry about. But after my wife passed, I began to carry a weight I couldn't explain. I still smiled when neighbors waved. I still showed up to church on Sundays. But inside, there was this tightness that never went away. A heaviness in my chest that no amount of sleep could fix. I wasn't grieving in the way people expected. I was functioning. I was polite. I was quiet, but my heart was not at peace. Doctors at Harvard have studied the effects of chronic stress on the body. When you're under long-term emotional strain, your body produces a hormone called cortisol. That hormone triggers your blood vessels to tighten, your heart rate to increase, and your blood pressure to rise. Over time, that response becomes your body's new normal. Your heart starts living in survival mode, and eventually it burns out. Looking back, I can see the signs clearly now. I was snapping at small things. I wasn't sleeping well. My chest felt tight, even though every test said I was physically fine. And yet I never talked about it. I never told anyone. Because as older men, we've been taught to keep things in, to stay strong, to not burden others. We confuse silence with strength. But that kind of silence, it's deadly. So let me ask you something. Are you really okay? Or are you just pretending to be okay because that's what you think you're supposed to do, because pretending has a price? And it's often your heart that pays it. These days, I do something small that makes a big difference. Every morning before I touch my phone or turn on the news, I sit quietly for 5 minutes. I breathe slowly. I close my eyes. Some mornings I write down what I feel. Other times, I sit on the porch and play the old songs we used to dance to. It doesn't fix everything, but it softens the sharp edges of the day. And just as I began to find calm again, I realized there was another weight I'd been carrying for years. a physical one, right around my waist. Salt doesn't strike you down in one bite, but meal after meal it quietly wears your heart thin until it can't keep up anymore. For years I thought I was eating healthy. I avoided fried foods. I didn't cook with butter. I even stopped buying chips. Most nights I'd warm up a can of soup and tell myself I was doing better than most. It was low in fat, didn't taste too salty, and only took 5 minutes. But I never bothered to turn the can around and read the label. I didn't realize that what tasted mild could still be packed with sodium. Doctors from the American Heart Association explain that sodium holds onto water inside your bloodstream. That extra fluid increases the volume of blood flowing through your vessels. More volume means more pressure. And more pressure means your heart has to work harder to push that blood through. Over time, that constant strain thickens your arteries, raises your blood pressure, and pushes your heart toward exhaustion. It sounds dramatic, but it's not. It's biology, and it happens slowly, quietly, like it did with me. One day during a routine checkup, my doctor asked about my diet. I mentioned the soup. His eyebrows lifted. He told me that just one serving of canned soup could contain over 800 milligrams of sodium. That's more than half the daily limit for someone my age. I felt foolish. I had spent years trying to avoid sugar and fat, but never thought salt was the real issue. And I know I'm not alone. A lot of us seniors fall into the same trap. We assume that if something doesn't taste salty, it must be okay. We skip the nutrition label. We trust packaging that says light or heart smart without looking closer. But salt is sneaky. It hides in bread, sauces, frozen meals, even cereal. And if we're not paying attention, it adds up. So here's a simple question. Would you rather keep eating fast and easy meals and take a gamble with your heart? Or would you choose to slow down just a little and give your body the break it's been quietly asking for? These days I do something I never thought I'd enjoy. I cook. Nothing fancy. Just simple meals with garlic, rosemary, a bit of turmeric, and olive oil. I still make soup, but now it's my recipe. My hands, my care. It tastes better. And I know exactly what's in it. And once I cleaned up what was in my kitchen, I started noticing another problem. Not outside, but right here, around my own waistline. It's not your weight that predicts how long your heart will last. It's your waistline. I used to joke about my belly, called it my retirement badge. My wife used to poke fun at it too, said it looked like I swallowed a watermelon. After she passed, the joke stopped, but the belly stayed. I told myself it was just part of getting older. A man's body slows down after 60. That's just the way it goes, right? What I didn't know was that this soft ring around my middle wasn't just extra weight. It was a warning light. The kind you ignore until the engine breaks down. Doctors from the Mayo Clinic have shown that visceral fat, the kind that builds up around your organs, is especially dangerous. Unlike the fat under your skin, this stuff is alive in a bad way. It pumps out inflammatory chemicals called cytokines. Those messengers raise your cholesterol, increase insulin resistance, and create the perfect storm for heart disease and diabetes. In simple terms, the more belly fat you have, the more stress your heart is under every minute of every day. And yet, I never thought to measure my waist. I just bought bigger pants. I wore looser shirts. I convinced myself it didn't count if I couldn't see it. But the truth is, every inch above 37 inches was pushing my heart closer to trouble. And I've seen so many men do the same. We laugh it off. We call it a beer belly, even when we don't drink beer. We use food as comfort and call it living. But here's the truth. That comfort has a cost. And sometimes it's a cost you only recognize when you're lying in a hospital bed wondering how you got there. So let me ask you, would you rather eat to forget your pain or lighten the load on your heart so you can be here longer for the people you love? These days, I eat dinner earlier, usually before 6. I give my body time to digest before I sleep. And after I eat, I take a short walk around the block. 15 minutes. Nothing intense. Just enough to keep my blood moving and my belly from growing. I've lost a few inches over the past year, but more importantly, I feel lighter inside. My heart beats easier, my breath comes smoother, and I know I'm not carrying that silent burden anymore. But even with a lighter step and a cleaner plate, I learned the most dangerous thing of all was the one I couldn't feel. The thing I thought I could skip because I still felt fine. High cholesterol doesn't hurt, but when it finally does, it may already be too late. I remember sitting in the doctor's office for a routine checkup. I felt fine. No chest pain, no dizziness, no shortness of breath. Just a little tired, but at my age that felt normal. So when the doctor came back with my blood test results and looked me straight in the eyes, I knew something wasn't right. He told me my LDL cholesterol was dangerously high, not just borderline, dangerous. The kind that builds up like sludge inside your arteries. The kind that narrows your blood flow and makes your heart fight for every beat. He explained that over time, this buildup forms plaques along the artery walls. Those plaques can rupture without warning, causing a clot that blocks blood to the heart. That's what causes a heart attack. And many times the first symptom of high cholesterol is death. I sat there in silence. All those years I had skipped my annual blood tests. I figured if I felt okay, I was okay. But I was. I was carrying a silent threat inside me every single day, and I didn't even know it. And I'm not the only one. So many of us over 60 think checkups are optional. We don't want to bother with appointments. We're afraid of bad news. Or worse, we think we already know our bodies well enough. But the truth is, some of the most dangerous conditions are the quietest. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, irregular heartbeat. They sneak up without a sound. So let me ask you, would you rather know what's happening inside your body and take control early? Or would you rather wait until your chest tightens and pray it isn't the end? These days, I do something I wish I had done sooner. I get my blood tested once a year, just a simple panel. I check my blood pressure every week with a home monitor, and I wear a watch that tracks my heart rate and rhythm. It's not complicated. It takes just a few minutes, but those minutes give me peace of mind. And after facing what I couldn't see, I began to look at what I was doing every day. Because the truth is, no test or pill matters if we don't build the right habits to protect our heart one day at a time. It wasn't the pills or the doctor's advice that saved my heart. It was what I chose to do every morning when no one was watching. For a long time, I thought managing my heart meant taking a few pills with breakfast and hoping for the best. I followed prescriptions. I showed up to appointments. I figured as long as I wasn't skipping medication, I was doing my part. But something inside me still felt off. My energy was low. My sleep was restless. My heart still raced during small moments of stress. One morning, I sat on the porch with my coffee, staring at the sky turning pink. And I thought to myself, maybe what I really need isn't more medicine. Maybe it's more rhythm, more steadiness. Not in my heartbeat, but in the way I live. Harvard researchers have written about behavior change and how the smallest consistent actions can create the biggest long-term results. They call it microhabits. It's the idea that doing something small every day builds momentum. Your brain begins to trust the routine, and your body follows. It's not about big changes, it's about daily ones. I realized I had been caring for my heart in short bursts, after a scare, after a bad reading. I'd eat better for a week or walk more for a few days, but then I'd fall back into old ways. The truth is, most of us seniors do the same. We wait until something goes wrong to start doing things right, and then we expect results overnight. But the heart doesn't work that way. So let me ask you, are you building habits that your heart can rely on, or are you only showing up for it when you're already afraid? What I do now is simple. Every Sunday I write a small plan for the week. Nothing big, just 3 or 4 things I want to keep doing. Drink water, walk after dinner, breathe before bed. I set a reminder on my phone to stretch in the afternoon. And I made a promise to myself, just 21 days. That's what they say it takes to build a habit, and I stuck with it. Now my habits feel like part of who I am, not rules, not chores. Just little ways of showing my heart I care. And that, my friend, is when I truly began to feel different. Not because of a diagnosis, not because of a miracle, but because I finally took ownership of the small things. And that's what gave my heart a second chance. Looking back on everything I've shared with you today, I realized that most of the changes that saved my heart didn't happen in hospitals or waiting rooms. They happened right here in my home, in the quiet moments when I chose to do something different. A glass of water in the morning, a slow walk after dinner, sitting down to breathe instead of rushing through the day. I used to think aging meant losing control, that my health was something only doctors could manage. But now I see it differently. Growing older gave me the chance to listen more carefully to my body, to treat it with the care I once reserved only for others. I'm not perfect. I still have days when I slip, but I no longer wait for fear or pain to remind me to take action. I remind myself with love, with patience, with the little habits I've built one by one. You don't need to do it all. You just need to start with one small thing today. Maybe it's a walk. Maybe it's calling your doctor. Maybe it's sharing this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because if you have a parent, a partner, or even a neighbor quietly living beyond 65, chances are their heart is waiting too, waiting for someone to care enough to say something. So if this story meant something to you, please share it. Not for me, for the ones you love, because sometimes all it takes is one quiet reminder to change a life.